Babe Ruth sale. On January 3, 1920, the Boston Red Sox sold Babe Ruth to the New York Yankees for $125,000 in cash, plus a $300,000 loan with Fenway Park itself as collateral. Owner Harry Frazee wasn't thinking about baseball, he was thinking about Broadway. He had a musical to finance, No, No, Nanette. And he was betting the stage would pay off faster than the outfield. Ruth, meanwhile, was expensive, difficult, and playing for a team going nowhere. Frazee thought he was solving two problems with one signature. Ruth put on pinstripes and hit 54 home runs in 1920, more than every other team in the league hit combined that season. Yankee Stadium started packing in crowds past 50,000 just to watch him hit. New York turned into a dynasty. Boston turned into a punchline for the better part of a century. 86 years without a championship. Fans gave it a name, the Curse of the Bambino. One quiet transaction, and Frazee had traded a legend for a loan to fund a show nobody remembers, Ferrari versus Lamborghini. In 1963, Ferruccio Lamborghini was building tractors, not cars, when he bought himself a Ferrari 250 GT. He liked almost everything about it, except the clutch, which kept giving him trouble. So he drove to Maranello to complain in person. Enzo Ferrari's answer didn't take long. "Stick to your tractors." Lamborghini didn't argue back. He went home, hired engineers away from the competition, and spent over $500,000 building a car of his own. By 1964, the Lamborghini 350 GT was rolling off the line, hitting 155 miles an hour and selling on sight. 2 years later came the Miura, 171 miles an hour, with a shape that basically invented what a modern supercar was supposed to look like. Ferrari had insulted a paying customer and manufactured his own rival in the process. Today, Ferrari is worth billions, and Lamborghini answers to Volkswagen. Car historians still point to it as the most expensive comeback to an insult ever recorded. AOL-Time Warner merger. On January 10, 2000, Steve Case announced that America Online was merging with Time Warner in a deal valued at $165 billion. The pitch sounded unstoppable. Cable, movies, magazines, and email, all folded into a single company built for the internet age. For a brief window, Wall Street bought it completely, and it became the biggest merger corporate America had ever recorded. Then, the dot-com bubble popped. AOL's advertising income evaporated. Time Warner's old guard executives dragged their feet on every digital initiative. Departments fought each other instead of the market. By 2002, the merged company had posted a $99 billion loss, a record at the time. Investors watched billions disappear, and by 2009, AOL was cut loose for a fraction of what it was once worth. Case exited quietly, and with him went the idea that a single company could own the entire internet. Had AOL stayed on its own path, it might have owned streaming, social media, and search well before YouTube, Facebook, or Google got there first. Gillette under Procter Gamble. On January 28, 2005, Procter Gamble bought Gillette for $57 billion, the biggest consumer goods merger on record. CEO A.G. Lafley and Gillette's James Kiltz framed it as the birth of a grooming empire, uniting razors, batteries, and toothpaste under one corporate roof. For a while, the logic held. Then Dollar Shave Club and Harry's showed up, mailing cheap blades directly to customers' doors, and an entire generation stopped caring about the best a man can get. By 2016, Gillette's share of the U.S. market had slid from 70% down to 54%. Then came 2019, and an ad tackling toxic masculinity that split viewers straight down the middle. Boycotts followed. Sales dipped, and profits took a multi-billion-dollar hit. Executives kept defending the campaign, while shareholders kept losing patience. A brand that had led its category for generations found out how quickly an edge can dull. Budweiser dilutes its brand. On March 28, 2001, Anheuser-Busch rolled out Budweiser Select, a low-carb version built to chase health-conscious drinkers who were drifting toward light beers and imports. It was smoother, lighter on calories, and largely beside the point since Bud Light already had that market locked up and craft breweries were multiplying by the month. In 2012, the company tried again with Bud Light Platinum, betting on a sleeker bottle and a stronger kick. Sales jumped for a moment, then dropped just as fast. By 2016, Budweiser's U.S. market share had fallen under 7%, roughly half of what it commanded in the 1980s. IPAs and imports like Corona and Heineken kept chipping away at the shelf space the king of beers used to own outright. Harley-Davidson's marketing fail. On June 25, 1994, Harley-Davidson decided to license its name for cologne, wine coolers, and even cake decorations, banking on the idea that the logo alone could sell anything. For decades, that name had meant open roads and chrome and a certain kind of rebellion. Slapping it on perfume and bubble bath didn't extend that image. It undercut it. The Hot Road cologne hit shelves that year smelling like nothing a biker would recognize, just another bottle of drugstore scent with a famous name on the label. Dealers wouldn't stock it. Riders openly mocked it. Sales never got off the ground, and by 1997 most of the lineup was quietly discontinued. Harley went back to building motorcycles, but the reputation took a hit it didn't need to take. Bayer buys Monsanto. On September 14, 2016, Bayer agreed to acquire Monsanto for $63 billion, the largest all-cash acquisition ever recorded. CEO Werner Baumann called it the perfect marriage of pharmaceutical science and agricultural technology. What he didn't emphasize was that Monsanto came with a mountain of lawsuits already attached, most of them tied to its weed killer, Roundup. Once courts started connecting Roundup's active ingredient to cancer, the fallout arrived fast. By 2019, Bayer's stock had dropped more than 40%, erasing upwards of $30 billion in value. Billions more went toward settling over 100,000 legal claims. Baumann held his ground publicly, while investors grew louder in private. Bayer had spent a century building a name in medicine. This deal made sure Monsanto's baggage came with it. Yahoo rejects YouTube. In 2006, 3 former PayPal employees, Chad Hurley, Steve Chen, and Jawed Karim, were running a scrappy video site called YouTube, and they offered to sell it for around $1 billion. Yahoo's CEO Terry Semel passed, calling it too rich a price for a company that had never turned a profit. At the time, Yahoo was still a major player, running email, search, and news out of one hub, and video looked like a nice-to-have, not a priority. But YouTube's traffic was doubling month over month, fueled by viral clips and music videos, and whatever else people wanted to upload. By November 2006, Google moved in and bought the site for $1.65 billion in stock. 2 years later, YouTube wasn't a nice-to-have anymore. It was the closest thing the internet had to television. Yahoo's video ambitions quietly faded out by 2010. Sears misses Amazon. On May 15, 1997, Amazon went public at $18 a share, and almost nobody at Sears paid attention. A decade earlier, Sears had been the largest retailer in the world, its catalog dictating how the country shopped. But a small online bookstore run by Jeff Bezos was starting to grow into something much bigger, and Sears kept its focus on malls and catalogs and store credit. By 2001, Amazon had already passed $1 billion in sales, while Sears' own attempt at an online store lagged far behind. In 2005, Sears merged with Kmart to compete with Walmart, misreading where the real threat was actually coming from. That same year, Amazon Prime launched and permanently changed how people expected to shop. By 2013, Sears' revenue had fallen more than 40%, with hundreds of stores already shut. The bankruptcy filing came in 2018. Had Sears taken e-commerce seriously back in the 90s, Amazon might still just be a bookstore. Kodak fails to adapt. In 1975, a Kodak engineer named Stephen Sasson built the first digital camera ever made. It weighed 8 pounds, nearly 8 times heavier than a standard film camera, and used a sensor capable of just 100 by 100 pixels. Recording a single black-and-white image took 23 seconds, and the only way to view it was on a television screen. When Sasson demonstrated it for Kodak's leadership, they were polite, and then they asked him not to talk about it. Film was the company's entire business model, generating billions a year, and digital looked like the thing that would eventually kill it. At the time, Kodak held nearly 90% of the U.S. film market and was valued above $31 billion. But through the 1990s, Sony, Canon, and Nikon started putting digital cameras into the hands of everyday photographers. By 2005, the digital camera market alone was worth $25 billion a year, and Kodak barely had a presence in it. The company eventually entered the race decades after it should have. By 2012, Kodak had shed more than $30 billion in value and filed for bankruptcy, undone by a technology its own engineer had invented in a back room almost 40 years earlier.